Introducing NASM One, NASM's ultimate membership program. Unlock access to everything your fitness career needs to succeed. Unlimited CEUs, free courses, access to our premium app, and exclusive discounts, all for $35 a month. NASM One is best-in-class tools, cutting-edge certifications, confidence in your craft, and everything you do as a personal trainer made easy, so we can achieve our greatest goals together as one.
You're listening to Random Fit with hosts Wendy Batts and Ken Miller, winner of a Gold Markham Award for Digital Media.
Hello, everyone. Welcome to Random Fit with myself, Wendy Batts, and friend and colleague, Ken Miller. How are you?
I'm great, Wendy. How are you doing?
Doing great. Doing great. As always, it seems. I enjoy this hour, and hopefully our listeners do as well. And today's topic is on plastics and your health unwrapped, if you will. I find this to be a topic that we don't talk enough about. However, this hit home a couple years ago in my house because my husband came home after reading a bunch of research. Because again, there's research out there, and some, it's not. Some people say that this is the end all be all. Other people say, it's controversial. So just take all of what we talk about with a grain of salt. But I do challenge you by the end of this episode to go into your kitchen and check all of your containers, because when my husband came through the door, he started looking at all of our containers. And if it did not say things like BPA free, he threw it in the floor that ended up in the garbage, no questions asked. And I'm like, what are you doing? Because I didn't know. I literally had no idea. And that's why I was excited about talking about this topic, because if I didn't know about this, now granted, this was a while ago, there might be some of you guys out there that don't know either what's in these containers and how harmful it can be for your health.
And, we did the same thing in our house, Wendy. We evaluated what's in our cabinets, and maybe we didn't do the full clean sweep, but what we did do is we looked at our water bottles, just because our kids are active. We get out there, we're always carrying bottles around. And, because people know that we're active, they've given us, here's a sports bottle, but then it forced us to really look at the bottom of the bottles and look at the labeling and see how they were stamped. So if it said BPA free, it got to stay. But if it didn't, it got tossed out. But I mean, we're using more of the solid metal water bottles now, right? Because of all that. And, because we're trying to be more conscious about our nutrition and meal planning and meal prepping. As you know, Wendy, you take that one day aside. Let's say it's Sunday. Well, for us, it's Sunday, and I'll take care of the first 3 days out of the week. But that really forced me to look at, where are my containers? Mm-hmm. And, half of what I have is just some piece of plastic. So I had to evaluate where I was storing and reheating my meals. And I had to go to the store. I had to go get some more because it was three or four of those containers. And if you're trying to do that for 2-3 days at a time, I ran out of containers really fast. So that was another eye opener as far as how many containers I have that did not qualify. Now, when you start to look at the BPA symbol.
And when we're talking about BPA, those of you guys that are not sure what that is, it's bisphenol. What is it?
Bisphenol.
Bisphenol. Yes. Bisphenol A. That's why we call it BPA. That's what it's short for. But if you guys look on your containers, it should say BPA free. And the reason you want that is because BPA is a chemical that's found in polycarbonate plastics. This is often used in your food, your beverage containers. It can be in the lining of some of your canned vegetables or fruits. And so therefore, when you're thinking about this, this can lead to human exposure. It leaks into this area. And the thing is when you're looking at what BPA can do to you, it is hormone disruption. It can be reproductive disruption. It can be developmental issues, especially in a fetus. And so there are a lot of things that if it doesn't say that in there means that it's in there, because they don't have to say this contains, BPA on any of the labels. It does not have to say that. And unfortunately, we don't regulate that through our FDA. And so when you're looking at some of these chemicals that are in there, and then what it can do, especially to your children, then we'll go into more detail about it. But I mean, number one was hormone disruption. And when we say that, it's known as an endocrine disruptor. So again, when you're thinking about your endocrine system, that's going to be what regulates your hormones. And I was like, oh, maybe that's my issue. I've got some issues with BPA in all my foods or drinks. That's not really the case. However, there are a lot of different studies showing that it can mimic the action of the hormone estrogen. And it's concerning because it starts to lead to more imbalances, and then it disrupts your normal function of your endocrine system. And so especially when you're looking and thinking about that, you're like, well, how often do I use plastics? Well, if you warm something up in the microwave, what are you putting it in? You're definitely probably not putting in stainless steel and sticking it in there. You're either using some sort of ceramics or something that's microwave safe, or some sort of plastic. And when you're thinking about warming something up, or you buy it from the store and it tells you to go ahead and put the package inside of your microwave or whatever it is to warm it up, those, especially under heat and what's happening through the microwave, then it gets into your food. And so it's not that you're doing it on purpose. It's just you want to think, okay, can I open up this packaging and put it in something that's microwave safe, BPA safe or free, and microwave safe, and then warm it up without even having any plastics associated with whatever it is that I'm either heating or reheating. And that's something too that I had to get into a habit of, because more and more that especially after doing even more research on this, Ken, I was like, oh my goodness, there are so many packages with plastic that do not say BPA free on just how it was stored, or, buying something in the frozen department and then you bringing it home wrapped in plastic. You don't see that written anywhere. There's a good chance that those plastics are also something that you should start to become more aware of.
Yeah. And when you talk about going to the store and you're buying something that's in that, that has that quality about it regarding the packaging, the one thing that you got to think about too is when they package it, wherever they package it, and they have it on the shelves at the supermarket, you got to think, okay, well, how long has it actually been in there? So frozen or not, right? And you talked about heating things up where it's most likely going to leak into the food or beverage at that point in time. You got to think it's been sitting there from the manufacturer, from where it was distributed to where it's now stored and being sold, and then it's got to sit in your refrigerator or shelf for that amount of time. So it's had that lengthy exposure. So those are some of the things that you got to consider when you look at the exposure to BPA. But getting into that hormonal side of things, I have kids. You have your son, and when you think about the exposure of estrogen, what that might mean to, let's say, a female, if you have that chemical that's now acting as or mimicking estrogen, it's going to disrupt. Your body's going to think, oh, I already have some so that might affect your body's own manufacturing of or production of estrogen. But if you've got, a male or son and young enough and now getting exposed to it, now that's going to expose that, again, to a hormone that's not naturally developed into their bodies. But I mean, enough's going to happen from the male side of things. But again, when we talk about the endocrine system and then now also diving into the natural hormonal cycle, or your monthly menstrual cycle, that's going to be a little whacked out as well over time. But also over the grand scheme of time and what the reproductive system is about, that will lead to problems when it comes to fertility.
Oh, that's a big one. I mean, when I was looking up some of the different research, and again, guys, there's so much out there, and you can just put BPA and look up reproductive problems or disruption or issues, whatever way you want to word it. But I mean, like you said, there are a lot of issues with reducing infertility. So those of us that might have had problems either trying to have babies or have been told you can't, is it something that was environmental due to something like BPA in some of your food? But also too, on the man side of it, you're lowering your sperm quality. So that, on both sides of the game. Plus, if someone is pregnant, what's happening in like while you're pregnant to the baby, it can lead to long-term development issues once the baby's born. And it's something that we don't think about, but when you're looking at this long-term, and they've done, on humans and animals. So we've looked at different types of research, and then what are they using? What are they testing this on? It showed positive in both, which is something that's super scary, because especially when you're looking at the developmental issues, I mean, that too, like when you're thinking about, people that are now like, oh, you're ADHD, or you've got ADD, or you've got all of this stuff. It's like, well, I'm not saying that they weren't necessarily born without it if they weren't exposed to this, but that could be something too, that they were exposed over multiple times, and it did cause these developmental issues now later in life.
Yeah, and that's a huge concern when you think about, again, going back to what we originally said. We were living with these containers, and we're drinking out of it, we're eating off of it. And I just think, when I picked out some of those containers, we've had them for a little bit. So a little bit, they were showing their wear on time. And I think, how many times did I eat off of that thing? How many times did that thing go into the microwave? And I was just like, oh gosh. And then you think, again, especially after reading this, Wendy, just thinking about my internals, like, okay.
Head, shoulders, knees, and toes,
Yeah,
all affected. Well, that's
miracle.
I mean, this is us just talking about BPA. So when you're thinking and looking at it, again, look for something that no matter what it is that you're buying, if you're buying containers to store things in, make sure that it says BPA free. If it doesn't say anything on there, there's a very good chance that there is BPA within that particular container or whatever it is that you're holding on to. But besides BPA, we've also got to bring up phthalates, because phthalates are also something that it's a chemical. It's a group of chemicals, not just one, but a group of chemicals that make up the plastics. And the reason why people use these is because they're more flexible and more durable. So think about that when you're looking at where they're commonly found. This is what's crazy. Food packaging, number one. And then also things such as, and this is my favorite part, shower curtains. And the reason it's my favorite is because Ken just put up a shower curtain after we had done the research, and he threw away the packaging. And then also toys, especially kid toys, baby toys, because these are the small little plastic toys that kids like to play with. They're fairly inexpensive, so parents sometimes will buy these toys. So make sure when you're looking at it, does it have phthalates in it? And again, it's not spelled like it sounds. It's PHTALATES. Look for that to see if there's anything in there that you should be aware of before you let your kids play, stick it in their mouth, chew on it, break it apart, whatever the case may be.
Yeah, we just need to be more aware now, especially with that one, because that's not, I mean, like you said, Wendy, that's a group of chemicals and plastics. So if it says it, and I now I want to dig into the trash and look at that packaging from the. Now you got me all paranoid now, because like you just said, Wendy, I just put up that fresh new shower curtain, took a shower, and you just that's that fresh plastic smell. It's just new. Now I'm thinking, am I just inhaling phthalates this whole time? But I guess it's just about, one of the goals that we have here on Random Fit is the fact that, not only are we talking about random fitness, but the aspect of how different environmental things around us, our purchasing habits, our consumer habits do affect us in our health and wellness. So thank you all for listening to both Wendy Batts and I, Ken Miller, here on Random Fit, as we're talking about, plastics, all right, and your health unwrapped. But here's the thing, plastic, it's just around us, and we just want you to be more aware of what kind of plastics that you're using, and we'll go over this a little bit more. But this one, again, the same general effects when it comes to just like with BPA with the phthalates. So just be aware of that.
Well, and so we're just going to keep going down a list. Another one that kind of I want to say is more people are more aware of are the microplastics. And the reason I say they're more aware of it because that's what's found mainly more in the environment. It's in your water. It's even in some of your food items. And so, people are like, oh, try to limit your bottle use, plastic bottles. Well, it can be actually in the water itself. And so that's something that's crazy. Ken and I did a random fit talking about the different water, that not all water is equal. And it's because the impurities that are in some of this water. And so it's not anything that you can see. It's not like you're going to be drinking a chunk of plastic. It's just these little bits that sometimes get into our food, even from different types of packaging and, just the environment itself. And so that's something that we have to be more aware of. I don't know if it's anything that we can necessarily change, but then again, too, when you're thinking about pollution, you're thinking about people that just, throw trash on the sides, and what ends up happening when it gets into our soil. Then we grow, fruits and vegetables and stuff from this type of soil. And it's just something to be aware of because microplastics is also an issue. And the reason why this one's important is because of the toxicity. I don't know. I cannot talk today. Toxicity is a big thing. It can increase inflammation. So your inflammatory response to things. So that's huge. It's not clear of why that happens. But then again, too, what happens over time to the human tissue when it's exposed to these microplastics is also a huge concern.
And just to give you an example, so when we looked up microplastics, if you think of something, and it's something that we've been using for a while, is just the those little detergent pods, Wendy.
Oh, don't tell me.
Yeah, I know. It's just
I'm a potter because it's easy.
It's easy, and there's no scooping, there's no dripping, but
Go and go.
If it's about the plastic, there are some if it doesn't get dissolved all the way, and it doesn't truly get dissolved all the way. Have you ever done a load of laundry and seen the plastic just not dissolve, like on one of your pieces of clothing? I've seen that just a couple times. For as many times as I've used those little pods, I've seen it a couple times where it might have just didn't dissolve and it just sat on top of the pile, I guess. But here's the thing: even though to our eyes it dissolves, there's still plastic that now can get dissolved into your clothing. If not, at least during the rinse cycle, now it's going out with the water. So as you discussed, environmentally, it's out there. I mean, if you're using that, if that is your laundry technique of choice, that, I mean, for all its conveniences, it's still a factor, and it's a situation where, we are introducing plastics to the environment as well as.
Well, but plastics is also now becoming more common in actual fabrics and tennis shoes and anything that's recycled. You hear this, but it's like, what type of plastics are being used? And again, this isn't something that's going to be written on a label. This is just something to make you guys more aware, because it is out there. It is everywhere. And it's one of those things where no matter how health conscious you are, if you don't know these things or know to check these things, then, that was really the whole purpose of today, is making sure that you are understanding how it can affect your health. Because, we talked about the endocrine system. I think it's also important when you're thinking about that too. When you've got those disruptive compounds happening throughout your body, it can interfere with your endocrine system, right? And so that's not only just your hormones, but it can lead to certain types of cancer. It can lead to obesity. It can lead to a lot of other things, just based on what I'm seeing and what I'm reading. And again, it's very controversial, because where are we getting some of the products, whether it's from different countries, different stores, different manufacturers. And so you're not trying to throw one company or one country under the bus over another. However, if it is coming from somewhere that isn't, where it says organic, or, you can see what the ingredients are, or their claims, then, it's just something where you just need to start kind of being more aware of what your kids are playing with, what you're playing with, what your dogs are playing with, what you're eating and drinking out of, how you're warming your food up, because it can lead to other issues.
Right. So, and I mean, I'm nodding my head. I'm kind of I'm really absorbing your words, Wendy, because when I really looked at the idea of, okay, well, or just our collective exposure in this house, because if you get a to-go box, right, it's probably going to be in some styrofoam, or even if we're taking, bringing food home from a family get together, it's going to be in a plastic bag. So it's just you use plastic a lot. But to your point, Wendy, we do have containers or plastic containers that are free of these other things, but we do still try to limit the amount of times that we have to use it, because plastic's there. If it's out there and it's in the environment, it's in the environment, right? It's not going anywhere anytime soon.
It is not. It is not. And that's just, we're now when we store things, we use more glass containers. We make sure we don't really use plastic much in my house at all. Like I said, even if it comes in a packaging where it says, oh, you can put this in the microwave, we still take it out and put it in a glass something to warm it up, heat it up, or whatever the case may be, because of these little things that I know we can help, just at least eliminate it for a short period of time.
Yeah. And something that we've done, Wendy, if we know we're going to one of our favorite restaurants, the might sound a little hokey, but we have gone to where if we know we're going to take stuff home, rather than take the container that they give you, whatever it is, we will we'll bring it ourselves. And so that way we're just not using more. So that whole reduce, reuse, recycle, we are definitely trying to do our part sometimes to reduce. But again, it is one of those, well, when we get the box, the cardboard boxy looking container, that's what we're going to use. But overall, it's when we try to store things, if we have, make more dinner than we're able to eat at that point in time, we try to store it in, we keep it in the plate, just cover it over. Or, like what you guys do, have a glass container, something that I don't have to transfer it, wash another dish, right? So I'll just, if I can heat it up in the same container that it's stored in, that's what I'll do. And that's just for ease. So it was a trip to one of our local stores to get those sets of containers.
We use glass ones for sure. Us too. Us too. Even in our freezer.
Even in the freezer.
I don't think that's what you're supposed to do, but we're trying it.
All right. So when it comes to looking at plastics, your exposure, how you use it, how often you use it, this is, again, for me, when I started, again, meal prepping, trying to incorporate that into the day, I had to evaluate where I was. And it did mean, okay, I had to look at how much I needed to prepare for the 3-4 meals for those 2-3 days. And so I had to spend a little bit more money than I wanted to, or had I planned to, when I went to the local store and got those sets of containers. But the one thing I will say is that it did help me with my storage within my fridge, right? So now they stack nice, it looks nice, it's neat, it's pretty convenient from that standpoint, and I can heat and store within the same container. So overall, I think it was really good for me to evaluate what I was using, and the aspect of reusing something that's, I hate to use the word disposable, but when that was the intent, and it's not really made for storage or reheating, but more just transportation, those are the things that you have to look at.
And I think it's just important. Like, again, I think awareness is the whole reason I've said that multiple times, is because I was not aware until somebody said to me, hey, meaning my husband, like, let's look at this. And then once I saw how many bowls and how many, like you said, bottles and things that we had that had these, unfortunately, some of these plastics in them, because it didn't say this free, like phosphates free or BPA free or whatever the case may be. And then seeing long-term what it can do. It's one of those that unless you don't think about it, and you just go on with your life. And so, Ken, I was glad that you let me kind of talk about this topic, because I think it's something that, as when you're like, oh, we're talking about plastics, I'm like, yeah, but listen to it on a health standpoint. I think it's the awareness more than anything. So thanks for letting me chat about it a little bit.
Yeah, I mean, I think we all need to be aware of it, especially if you have goals, you need planning, and you need to have the right equipment and the right things to take care of what you need to get done, especially when it comes to food containment and cleanliness, and in this case, exposure to plastic. So, Wendy, thanks as always for sharing your insight and telling us about how scared you were when you first saw it all. But for those of you listening to us here on Random Fit, thank you so much for listening to us on this episode and our discussion about plastics and your health unwrapped. If you want more from us, please let us know, email, comment, but like, follow, subscribe, download, and please share. If you benefit from this, chances are you know somebody else who will. So until next time, everybody, take care and be well.